I wanted to start by congratulating you on the recent commitments that you've gotten with FIBA as a FIBA commissioner.
Officials, first of all, are not the game. Officials are part of the game. An important part of the game, because after all, as you may know and everybody can also be aware of, without officials there will not be a game. However, it is bad if officials look at the game in a sense that one would think that officials are indispensable for the game. Especially today, when I started off way back in the 90s, internet technology was in its prehistory. Okay, we didn't have. I wish I had all the opportunities that today's young referees have, especially with technology, with all these videos and games and applications that you could use to review your own games. Instances, games that instantly come to my mind might not be, for example, many have asked me, for example, one of my top assignments were, for example, my 2 times in Eurobasket Women Championships. These are the top European Championships in 2011 in Poland, and also just last summer in France. I had also a very important milestone in my career was the 2006 Commonwealth Games in Australia. I refereed the final there in Australia for the Commonwealth Games. However, a game that I remember and I really like because it was a great performance as a team, because ultimately when we talk about refereeing, it's not an individual, it is a team. In basketball, we use a 3-man system. It was a great chemistry, and both before the game and during the game was, for example, 2013 the under 18 European Championships. This was the bronze medal game in Latvia. Spain against Latvia, where Spain won the bronze medal with a buzzer beater 3-pointer just seconds before the end of the game. A buzzer beater, a 1-point win. When, for example, in Latvia there were the likes of Porzingis playing, Juan and William Hernan Gomez for Spain. It was not only these were under 18s, these were the crop, the today's stars, okay, but it was also the chemistry going into the game. But then there are other games that you remember. For example, for sure I remember way back in my start of my career, the first time, for example, that I had an 9,000 persons in the gym packed arena, for example, in Turkey, being in the dressing room and hearing, you might football people might say, okay, 8,000, 9,000, 12,000, 15,000 is not that much compared to 70,000, 80,000 in a football stadium. But remember, talking about a basketball arena where it's much smaller. It's a closed environment. But I still remember, for example, hearing in certain games, being in the dressing room, sometimes also beneath the court, hearing the supporters and the preparations for the games. There will be butterflies in your stomach. You have to admit you've got those games, okay. But then obviously, also through experience, once you have the jump ball, once you whistle more than the jump ball, once you whistle your first call, okay, then everything will be going on. And sometimes this might seem strange, but sometimes the more people there are in the gym, the more focus, the easier it is for you to keep focused. And the more empty the gym is, sometimes you start listening to yourself in the game, and sometimes it's boring, and maybe you are liable to make more mistakes when there are no people watching. But the more people, sometimes you are so immersed that you might think that I'm bluffing, but most of the time, you don't even hear the people, because you're so damn focused in the game. You're so focused on the 10 players that are on the court and on the sidelines, the benches, that you don't even hear the people and all that. It's only afterwards, when you see the post game, when you are reviewing your own game, you are doing the game breakdown after the game, that you start noticing that all that environment and atmosphere and singing and whatever going on in the gym.
And you mentioned Porzingis, Hernan Gomez. Was there a specific player that stood out in your career who you'd say, wow, this is the best player I've ever left for?
I've seen. I didn't have the opportunity to see hundreds of players, of top players, but talking about the top players that immediately you see, let's talk about young players first. Young players that I immediately saw and said he's going to be a star for sure. Taking the male aspect, for example, the first time I saw Spain under 16, and then in the Spain under 16 team there was a certain Ricky Rubio. Amazing. I still remember him playing against Russia, doing 51 points in the final of the championships. It was amazing. This was amazing stuff. We're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, could be 2005, 6 or 7. I can't remember the years exactly, but we're talking about that time. The first time, for example, I saw as an under 18 player, Luka Doncic. Okay, Luka Doncic play. You could see immediately that he's got amazing prowess. But for sure, the first player that made me work hard, I'm talking about top players, we mean top players, NBA players. The first player that made me work hard, I still remember, it was the year, I think, 99 or 2000, when I was refereeing a Courage game in Italy. And in this team, there were 3 of them eventually won the gold medal in the 2004 Athens Olympic Games. But there was a certain Manu Ginobili playing. At that time, he was still before he went to America to play in the NBA. And I still remember his first step was amazing. I was still a 29-year-old referee there, quite inexperienced, but his first step was, definitely I never saw before that, okay, somebody doing the first step so fast, okay, and definitely after the game, I was a wreck physically to try and keep up with the speed of Manu Ginobili in that particular game. But there were many other players, even from the women's side, top players that could see immediately that they're young and they're going to be superstars, and that's the joy of having an opportunity to referee these type of players, because you're ultimately at the top of the basketball environment.
And now we've seen the joy of your refereeing career, but I wanted to move to something a bit more closer to the end of your refereeing experience, because it has an unfortunate ending. And I'm not talking about the incident when you ended up injured during a game tip-off, which, by the way, I'd love to hear more about, by the way. But the fact that you were set to achieve 500 games by retirement, but due to COVID restrictions, which got in the way of that, you didn't make it. What happened exactly?
Well, you mentioned, as in everything in life, just like a rose, a beautiful rose has its thorns, also everything in life has got its pros and its cons. Along the course of the career, now 29 years now as refereeing, and 25 years of them as a FIBA referee. Therefore, there were many instances where things were not so rosy, and maybe we hit the thorn side. There were things that happened internationally, like you mentioned. There were also things that happened locally that were also maybe on the negative side, that maybe hurt me a bit, but I tend to try to be positive. Sometimes it's not easy to forget, but you have to forget sometimes if you want to move on. Before I answer your questions, things that happened locally, for example, a number of times, luckily, thanks God, these things have stopped, but a number of times my car was vandalized also locally, like scratched. And also remember in 2003, after the knockout final, somebody vandalized clearly my car when they threw big stone slabs on and broke the windscreen of my car locally here. Things that people that also, as I said, damaged my car. I happen to get to know about these people, but I tend to be on, maybe call me naive, but I tend to, forget, okay, and take this, what happened. I try to move on with life. And also a very sad incident in my career, which I really disappointed me, was in the mid 2000, where there was people who even had the cheek, I would say, to write officially, also doubting my integrity as a basketball official, something that I feel very, very, very strongly about my integrity, and I vouch hand on heart, okay, that something that since the start of my career, even as a player, okay, something that I feel strongly about, and I go to bed every single night confident and outrightly say that these things were never in my baggage. And I am the first one, and I've said many times, I will be the first one to report any co-official that I think or I sense that there's lack of integrity or trying to fix or do something with the game. But that is not sport. That is definitely not sport. Okay, does these things happen in life? In sport, well, sport is a reflection of life. Is there corruption in life? Yes, therefore there's corruption in sport for sure. But for sure, if I get heed of it, I will have no hesitation to talk about or to report this. And coming to that, that's why I felt very strongly about this particular communication, which really disappointed me. And I would say, I have to admit, I said it a couple of times, but at that time I was also just seconds away from quitting. Okay, I'm talking about 2003, 2004. I was seconds away from quitting, but I couldn't withstand such things. But then luckily people got me in the right frame of mind and made me move forward. And luckily I did so. Coming to your question, I will also talk about locally. I have nothing to maybe these are news items for you. I mean, they never heard these things, but I've said them before. Few know, for example, that when I started refereeing, or when I was offered the chance to referee, when I got injured, when I got nominated for my first game, which happened to be in Gozo, women game, but in the days following this particular game, the referees associate, most of the referees here in Malta also objected to my inclusion as a referee, and also threatened to strike and not to referee. But luckily then the head of referees at that time, Joe Grech, and also helped with his assistant, Leonard Falson, then convinced me to continue, and also convinced all the others to go back on their threat, okay, of striking. It might seem funny, but this is the case. Other things that disappoint me, for example, sometimes I like to be a team player, but I hate to say, but for example, when in 2013 I was nominated for the EuroLeague Women Final 8 in Russia, I needed some match practice, and whilst I am a team player and I try to help everybody, at that time I asked for colleagues to give me some of their games just to have more game practice before I go to Russia, because I was lacking some match practice at that moment. And unfortunately, some people did not heed to my plea and did not help me out. Okay, these are things that happen just like in a family. In a family, there are always feuds, but these are things that make you feel bad, because you don't expect this, especially in a sporting scenario. Coming back to your questions, yes, you mentioned. Let's start from the first one. You mentioned my I laugh, but it wasn't. I wasn't laughing for sure. My injury, my awkward injury. 2019, I think it was 18 or 19, I can't remember exactly, in Romania. These were the under 18 European Championships. I still remember going up to toss the ball, Romania versus Belgium under 18. I tossing up the ball for the jump ball, feeling something on my head. Yes, I felt a knock. It hurt a bit, but I said, okay, it's an okay, hit me. Okay, it happened that one of the jumpers, Romanian player, jumped badly and jumped forward instead of vertically, and his elbow finished to hit my forehead. I turned around and suddenly I see my vision like blurred, like something is coming, like something in front of my eyes. I just wipe my eyes and I see blood, literally blood coming down. I laugh, but it wasn't funny for sure. I stopped the game, and very briefly, the game was stopped. I was treated on the court, eventually went to hospital. I have three stitches, permanent reminder of this game. My forehead, I have also some hair gone because I had to shave part of my hair, and unluckily I am still 22 years old, and therefore my hair can grow, okay, and definitely hair doesn't grow back so fast now, and therefore it is also lacking hair there. But I mean, it was an experience going to hospital, 3 stitches. The game still went on because then there was the standby referee that came in and finished the game. And being who I am, I love the game. And 3 days later, I was back on the court refereeing. Okay, even though I was even offered the opportunity not to referee, but I returned back to refereeing in this particular championships. Coming to my recent adventure, let's call it this way. Yes, I was looking forward to end my career. I wasn't happy that I was ending my career because I wanted to continue refereeing, but rules are rules. At 50 years, you've got to stop refereeing. And in FIBA, in your 50th year season, you have to end at the end of the season. It's not 50 years, the day you are 50 years, you stop. No. When you get, my birthday is in December. I was 50, not this last December, but the December 2020. Therefore, I had to keep on refereeing until August of last year, the end of the season. And I was looking forward, after going for the Eurobasket in France and also doing the European Small Nations Women Championships in Cyprus. I was looking forward to my last nomination in FIBA, and also I was just 4 games away from doing my 500 game. Normally in these championships you always have round about 4 to 5 games in these championships, and therefore I was sure that I'm going to do well. I was thinking that it will be my 500th game is going to be also probably my last game as an international referee. But I had to fly on Sunday for these particular championships. Just 2 days prior, I went to do a PCR test, not because I was asked to do a PCR test, but because I felt it, as I did always when I flew before under COVID, it was my responsibility to do my PCR test. I did my PCR test, but unluckily in the evening, Friday evening, the report came in via an email that the test was positive. A big shock for sure. I could not believe myself because I was doing a regular PCR test. I was going in with my physical preparation, hands-on 100% every day. Even on that day instant on Friday, I was running 10K in the morning and also doing an extra workout during the afternoon, and nothing was indicating that I was ill. You might say, how do you know? How can you be so certain, or almost so certain, that nothing was wrong? Because when we trained, we had also to use our fitness trackers, our fitness monitors, because as a FIBA referee, your training has to be registered and sent daily to the FIBA headquarters, because there are coaches that monitor also the training. And as you might know, and others who are savvy to certain medical intelligence may understand, your heart rate cannot lie. I can lie and tell you I have no fever by saying that, okay, but heart rate doesn't lie. When you are ill or you have something, automatically your heartbeat, resting heartbeat or working heartbeat, is going to vary. There's at least a 10%, 15% difference, and immediately we'll understand that something is wrong. And nothing was showing, but let's forget that for a moment. The result was positive. I had to accept that this was positive, but I felt that something was maybe not that correct. And I carried out five PCR tests 24 hours apart in the next 5 days. Therefore, I did tests on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, and on Wednesday. And all these tests resulted negative. I know there are rules. I am aware that there are rules, but as in everything in life, I believe that nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. It could be that the test was a false positive. Although it was given to me that it's not possible, it is well known everywhere around that there's a small, but there is a small percentage that there could be a false positive test. Or else I could have been positive at the end of my, let's say, COVID illness, which means that you might have some remains not infectious, okay, of COVID. But the fact that you have not one, not two, and as you might be aware, today it's becoming now common trend in the sports world that once you get 2 negative tests, you are free. You are free from not infectious. Therefore, you can go out from quarantine. Certain sports, including basketball, have had this also. NBA introduced it only lately, but FIBA have had this also prior to this. Let alone five in a row, negative tests in a row. For sure, science proves this today clearly, that the probability of having not 2, but 3, but 4, but 5 negative tests, the chances are very, 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 very small that you are infectious. And obviously, I had to cancel my tournament, the coming tournament that was supposed to be in Ireland, but because I have a good relation also with FIBA offered me also, because they knew. And they knew how much it meant for me to finish my career. I mean, on a good note, they offered me to go to another tournament the week after. These were the last most tournaments in summer. There weren't another tournaments then after August, because once August finished, I'm out. And what I offered, I know there are rules, but sometimes you have to use common sense. You can't go, I spoke before, there are rules, but if you go black on white, you are literal, okay? I believe that in life, you cannot use a one-size-fits-all approach to everything, just like in everything, just like teaching, whatever, okay? There are rules, and there's also common sense. And I didn't ask to be released from one quarantine immediately after my 5th test. I even offered that I do 3 more extra days in quarantine, knowing that after 5, clearly that 5 after 5 negative tests, your infection rate is at a minimum. And then I would have done 8 quarantine days instead of 14 with all these negative tests in hand. And I would go then for my next tournament, but also this permission was not granted. And obviously I wasn't happy, but I had to accept the decision. FIBA kept until the eve of the second tournament opened the chance for me to fly. I really appreciate their help, because they really wanted me to help, even though the doctors from FIBA were telling me this is crazy, because it's clear that you are not infected, but whatever. I had to accept this, and I had to close off my career with the Cyprus tournament. Luckily, my last game happened to be also the final of that tournament. Therefore, at least I look at my last game as being the final, I mean, an important game in those championships. But then afterwards, okay, God closes one door, but he opens probably 2 or 3 more in life. And I'm lucky that afterwards in September, other doors opened. And luckily I have other responsibilities now in FIBA. Of course, nothing beats the fact that you are on the court refereeing. That is amazing. But the rules are there. 50 years, I have to do other responsibilities. At least I can keep on refereeing, at least locally, a different atmosphere, different level, but at least I can keep on doing my refereeing also locally.
And now speaking about local and other commitments, you also act as an instructor for Everest, and you mentioned it even earlier on in the interview as well. And I want to talk about this because I find this very important. that even after the on the court instruction, you also take on a creative side by creating educational videos, even on YouTube, and the channel is going to be in the description of the video here as well. How did that come about, and what do you have in store for the new year?